Okay, so we have talked about supplies, we've talked about sewing machines. The last thing we need to get is fabric. And I know choosing fabric can be very intimidating to new quilters, and frankly, it can be intimidating for experienced quilters too. There's just so much variety. There's the different colors, different textures, different styles. Do you want batik? Do you want reproduction? Do you want a 50s sort of style? Do you want something more modern? Are you a maximalist? Are you a minimalist? There's just so much to choose from. So for now, we're going to focus on our first quilt specifically, and then later on we can talk about choosing fabric in general. For our first quilt top, all you're going to need is one layer cake. Sometimes it's called a 10-inch stacker. They're the same thing, it's just slightly different branding. A layer cake is a bundle of fabric from a single fabric collection, and it's cut into 42 10-inch squares. When you're shopping, make sure you don't accidentally pick out a junior layer cake because it's only half of what a layer cake is. While you're shopping for fabric, I recommend checking out the clearance or sale section. It's a good place to pick up some fabric to practice on. It's maybe not the prettiest stuff, it might not be exactly to your taste, but that's perfect because you can practice doing all your messy stuff on there before you move over to your beautiful fabric that you picked for your quilt. So you can practice cutting, you can test your machine's tension, you can practice your 1/4-inch seam allowance, all of that good stuff, but on ugly fabric you don't care that much about. Before we move on to fabric selection, there's one more thing we need to talk about, and that is the quilt pattern. I'm calling it the first waffle, and I designed it to be boring. I know it's not the most exciting quilt ever, but one, I didn't want you to have to match any seams, unlike a typical beginner square quilt, and two, I just really wanted you to be able to experiment with fabric here. This quilt is all about the fabric. It's not about construction or technique or fancy blocks. It's about the fabric, so you can have fun with it. And the final reason I made it boring is because I wanted to make sure that you enjoyed the process of making the quilt before I threw you in the deep end with a bunch of fancy blocks and techniques and quilter mumbo jumbo. I'm going to drag you over to my computer now so I can show you some mock-ups of 4 different colorways, styles, whatever you want to call it, 4 different options to help you get inspired before you go shopping. There might be something that you love that doesn't fit within one of these 4 categories, and that's perfectly fine. I want you to have fun and experiment with fabric, but I also want you to have a safe place to start from. The first color option I want to talk about is high contrast, and this is actually the color option that I will be working with. For this color option, you're going to want to find a layer cake that has a good mix of light fabric and dark fabric. If you find a layer cake that you like that doesn't have a very good mix, you can always buy 2 and mix and match the fabrics. And so like I said, this is the exact layer cake that I'm going to be using, and it's actually the same place that I bought it too. Fat Quarter Shop is absolutely great when you're shopping online. It has a lot of detailed pictures of your fabric. Not many fabric shops have this much detailed photographs to go with it, so this is really nice. You get a nice close look at everything that comes in your layer cake bundle, so really great resource. I'm going to link to not only the Fat Quarter Shop, but also all of the fabrics that I'm going to be highlighting in this video. So go ahead and check those out. You can see what's online, and you can compare it to what you have at your local fabric store. So here's the mock-up again, just so you can get a better look at it. We've got red, white, red, white, red, white all the way through. But here you'll see that I didn't have enough white to finish it out, and so I used some of the pink. So, and I want to point out that the mock-ups are not perfect. I can't tell which fabrics are going to be duplicated in the layer cake, so I had to make some educated guesses here. So this fabric line has 28 fabrics in it, and it includes 42 squares. So you can see that there are going to be some that are duplicated and some that are not duplicated, and that's not something we can know until we actually get the bundle in our hands. So keep an eye out on the number of fabrics in the collection, and that'll give you sort of an idea of how many duplicates there are. There are some collections that are going to have almost 40 different fabrics in it included, and so that means very few duplicates. So let's look at another high contrast option. This one is called Cocoa Blue. So you can see with this one there aren't as many light colors mixed in here. There's more mediums and darks, but this is still a good option. If you want more of the light colors, you can always get 2 bundles or 2 layer cakes like I said before. Let's take a look at a mock-up for this one. And actually, I don't think this is cocoa blue that I used to mock up, but I can't find the collection that I used before. But it is sort of, it's close-ish. That'll give you an idea of what that might look like a little bit. For our third example, I went a little bit more modern. There aren't as many traditional looking fabrics. It's just a little bit fresher, a little bit more fun. And instead of just having a contrast between two colors, we have light and dark, and also this contrasting color here, this sort of golden color. So here's the mock-up. I didn't spend a lot of time considering where I placed the fabric, or else I might have separated these a little bit. I just wanted to get a quick general idea of what it might look like. And this line has a ton of different prints in it, so there are very few duplicates in it. So I had to really guess when I was doing the mock-up, because I didn't know what would be duplicate and what wouldn't be. But I think it is a good choice if you want something more modern and less traditional. Color option number 2 is bold, colorful fabric. There are several fabric designers who are famous for their bold, maximal aesthetic, and you might be a fan of that too. So I'm talking about Kaffe Fassett, Anna Maria, and Tula Pink. Tula Pink's probably my favorite in this category. Their collections are full of big, colorful prints, and when you mix them all together, you get a sort of coordinated chaos. This layer cake right here you can see is rolled up instead of laid out flat, and that's sort of a signature of the Ruby Star Society fabric. I'm not a huge fan of it because it means you have to do some extra pressing before you get started, but their fabric is worth the extra effort. So this is actually my favorite fabric collection that I'm going to be showing you today. If I could go back in time and buy a different layer cake, it would be this one. It's just so cheerful and summery, and I especially like the way that these large prints look in the quilt. Let me bring up the mock-up so you can see. So here is one of those large prints cut up, and I love this continuation in the block. Here's another one here. I just think it looks really neat. I really like that. I also want to talk about how I arranged the fabric in this mock-up. Instead of just letting the fabric fall into place randomly, I did some purposeful color blocking. So I have pink, and I have the blues and greens, and then I mixed the pinks and oranges and yellows in a gradient on the side. And I really like how this turned out. I think it's just so playful and colorful. I love it. Definitely my favorite. So here is another example of bold, colorful prints. Again, very playful. So in the mock-ups, I want to show you a random placement of color and a more purposeful placement of color, just so you can see the difference side by side. So in this first mock-up, I didn't pay that much attention to where I was placing fabric, other than, matching pinks and blues here and there. But I eventually was running out of fabric, the different prints, and I came up with some weird color combinations that I wouldn't necessarily choose. But overall, it's got a nice sort of cohesive chaos, if you will. That might be exactly what you like, but it makes my brain itchy. So I did a little color blocking again, and I brought a little bit of order to that chaos. So again, here I did a little bit of orange, some pinks and blue, more pinks. This might be a good layer cake to get 2 in order to get a really good solid color blocking, because this row here doesn't quite hold its own in the quilt. But I just wanted to show you the difference between chaos and a little bit of color blocking, and how different the same collection of fabric can look based on how you arrange it. And for the last bold and colorful example, I wanted to change it up a little bit. The colors are more muted, and there are smaller prints mixed in with the large prints. And I think the combination of this fabric mixed with the pattern we'll be working on would be great for a baby blanket. The pattern isn't so difficult or time consuming, so it's less likely to hurt your soul when it gets stained and ripped and generally used and loved by a baby. So here is the mock-up, and I think it is doing a pretty good job of being a gender-neutral color palette. I haven't done any color blocking, it's just chaos. Sometimes I like to make baby quilts ahead of time before I know a baby is on the way, and just put it aside so that I don't have to make one last minute. So that might be a good option for you too if you want to do the same thing. Get a kid-friendly layer cake and have something to put aside for later. Monochromatic is a third color option. So we're talking all green fabric, all red fabric, all blue fabric. It's a more harmonious vibe. There's less contrast between the fabrics. One fabric might blend pretty seamlessly into the next one. So it's more of a color wash than a explosion of different prints. If this is the way you want to go, I suggest looking for a layer cake that has a good mix of color values from light to medium to dark. So as you can see in this bundle, we've got a bunch of light lights, some really dark darks, and a whole bunch of mediums. And when you put it all together, it's very soothing, calming, very harmonious. Now, this mock-up isn't a very good representation of the fabric because the scale of the prints is all wrong. So try not to look at how busy it looks because that's not how it would look in person. So as you can see, it's a very calming collection of fabrics. If you make a mistake in your quilt, it's very likely that you won't be able to see it when it all comes together. So very calming, forgiving collection of fabric. And here's another monochromatic option. We're back to a more traditional style of fabric. This would probably be good for a gardener, as the name implies here. I also like these little pops of pink in some of the fabrics. It just makes it seem a little more playful. It's got a little bit more contrast than if it was just all purely green. I think the monochromatic color option might be the hardest one to find out in the wild because most fabric lines are all about contrast. So you might want to focus in on batik fabrics. Those tend to be the ones that are most monochromatic in my experience. I forgot to mention, this is batik, and there are a few differences between batik fabric and the more traditional fabric that you're going to find in stores. The designs are all made using a wax resist and then dyeing over that, and then they remove the wax and you've got these brighter colors underneath. You'll also find that sometimes batik has sort of a chemical smell. It washes out just fine, but it might be unpleasant to work with for some people. There's also a little bit of a textural difference between the fabrics. I think batik is a little bit more stiff and more densely woven than the more traditional fabrics. So that's something you might want to explore when you go to the fabric store. And finally, the last color option I want to explore with you today is low volume. So this is for people who like subtle and understated. You're going to want to go low volume. The people who like to decorate with a lot of beige and creams and stuff. So low volumes are whites and creams, really washed out, pale colors, with usually much smaller, more delicate designs. Not always, but mostly. These fabrics are usually meant to be in the background of your more colorful quilts. They're not supposed to pull focus or draw attention. They're just supposed to balance the darker or more vibrant colors that people use in their quilts. But if you put them all together, you get something really calming and very neutral. If you decorate with a lot of color, it might be nice to have a little splash of neutral here and there. But this all comes down to your personal taste. So this is definitely the most understated color option we're looking at today. So here is another example, and you'll notice that along with the creamy colors, you've also got these splashes of blue, which are really nice and playful, I think. I don't actually have a mock-up for this collection, unfortunately. I made this mock-up from another collection, and when I was trying to find it for this video, it was nowhere to be found, so I guess it probably sold out. But I think this collection here is a good substitute. I just wanted to make sure to show you that it doesn't have to be all creams and taupes and whites. It can also have little pops of color included. And here's the last example for today for the low volume collections. Let's skip right to the mock-up here. And it seems to have the least contrast between colors, but there's a lot of contrast between the textures that are used. These are just a few of the options that you can look for. You absolutely do not have to stick with them. Just take a good look around and see what colors speak to you, which styles you really like, and just go with your gut. I know that choosing fabric can be daunting, but the process of looking at fabric and finding special designs or pairing up your favorite colors can be a lot of fun. And finally, before you go, I just want to talk about where to shop and what to avoid. So you may find a very, very limited selection of layer cakes at the big box store, but you're more likely to find nothing at all. To find the really good stuff, you're probably going to want to take a tour of your local quilt shops. However, this is where you'll probably find the highest prices. I recently saw a layer cake for $73. I would never buy a layer cake for $73. The average layer cake price that I have seen around is about $40 to $45. But the price can vary based on how popular the fabric designer is or if it's a brand new collection, that sort of thing. I personally like to buy my pre-cuts online because there's more variety and you can get a good look at all of the fabric. If you're looking at a layer cake in person, you can sort of flip through the fabric, but you don't get a very good picture of what's in there. But if you look at one online, like I showed you, you can often get some really detailed, good pictures of the fabric. The biggest bonus of shopping online, besides the variety, is that is where I find the absolute best deals, especially on Fat Quarter Shop. They have a flash sale page that is phenomenal, and they have a pre-cuts of the week page that's really great to check out. So as I said before, I'm going to leave links for all of the fabric collections that I highlighted in this video down in the description, and I'm also going to leave some links to my favorite places to shop for fabric online. So go ahead and give that a look and have fun shopping. Thanks for spending time with me today, quilters. If you want to support this channel and help me buy supplies and materials for future videos, please visit my Buy Me a Coffee page linked in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye!